Death is not merely the final moment of life. It is not simply some distant event waiting at end. It is present throughout our existence. Because as long as we are alive, we are always moving toward death. This may sound simple, but what it changes is the entire way life is understood. Welcome to Zhou Thinking Lounge, driven by curiosity. In the previous episode, we have been thinking about death. Some philosophers try to show that death does not truly harm us. Some argue that the death is part of nature and therefore should be accepted calmly. Others suggested that even in a world without final answers, human beings can continue to live and continue to create. All of these views are trying to answer one question: how should we face death? But Heidegger asks a different question. What really interests him is not only how we should think about death, he's asking something deeper. What happens to our lives when death is no longer just a distant fact, but becomes something existentially real? Heidegger believed that most of the time human beings live in a very ordinary condition. We work, we socialize, we deal with daily tasks. Everything appears natural. But the problem is that in this condition, we are often not living entirely in our own way. Our choices, our pace of life, and even our goals are shaped to a large extent by the world around us. Social expectations are the people's judgments. The force of habit. Heidegger called this condition the day. This does not refer to one specific person. It refers to a way of being in which this is how one lives. And so we live that way too. In this condition, we easily begin to organize our lives according to how people think we are supposed to live. Very often, we are not actively living our lives so much as moving along inside an already existing rhythm. And within this everyday life, there is one subject that we often deliberately avoid: death. We know that death will happen, but we usually do not truly think about it. We tell ourselves death belongs to the future. It does not need to be faced now. So we postpone it, ignore it, soften it. For Heidegger, this attitude is not neutral. It is a form of avoidance, a way of remaining inside the everyday condition of the day. Because as long as death stays in the category of later, life can continue in its ordinary pattern. We do not have to fully confront that time is limited. The life will not continue forever. And once that fact becomes real, the structure of life itself begins to change. This is exactly where Heidegger introduces one of his most important ideas: being toward death. Death is not merely the final moment of life. It is not simply some distant event waiting at end. It is present throughout our existence. Because as long as we are alive, we are always moving toward death. This may sound simple, but what it changes is the entire way life is understood. Because once a person truly realizes that death is not something that only arrives at end, but is a possibility that belongs to life all along, then life begins to appear differently. We begin to see that time is limited, the opportunities are not infinite, and that no one else can live our life for us. Others can advise us, guide us, organized part of our life that no one else can take up this finite existence in our place. In this sense, death is no longer only an ending. It becomes a structure through which life appears as finite, as one's own. Once this awareness truly appears, many things begin to change. Time becomes more important. Things that once seemed urgent may suddenly seem much less important. And deeper questions begin to emerge. How do I truly want to live? What do I actually value? Do the choices I am making now really belong to me? These questions do not come from the outside. They arise from the recognition that life is finite. Because once a person truly sees that their life is not endless, it becomes much harder to remain fully satisfied with simply moving along the path that everyone is already taking. In this sense, existence begins to become more individual. A person no longer lives only inside the rhythm of how everyone lives. They begin to face a more direct reality. This is my life, and it is limited. Heidegger called this shift authentic existence. Authenticity is not success. It is not a moral label that others can easily apply. And it is not simply a matter of being different. What it really means is this: a person begins to take a responsibility for their own life. They no longer live entirely according to the pattern of this is what everyone does. Instead, they begin to ask seriously, what is truly my choice? What kind of life am I willing to take responsibility for? Seen this way, authenticity is not easy. It may even be more demanding than ordinary life. Because once you truly recognize that life is finite, you can no longer postpone the most important question forever. You can no longer hand them over to some undefined future. But this way of living is more real. Because from that point on, a person is no longer merely drifting inside the ordinary pattern. They are beginning to take up their finite life as their own. In this sense, death is not only the end of life, it is more like a reminder that life is finite. And because it is finite, we are required to choose. We are required to decide how we will live. Thank you for watching Zhou Thinking Lounge. Stay curious, and I'll see you next time.